A woman backs slowly into a parking space after a normal grocery run. Tiny tap, barely audible. No shattered glass, no crumpled metal, no dramatic crash. She steps out of the car expecting nothing more than a scratched bumper. But 3 days later, her insurance company sends a repair estimate for $8,437. And suddenly, a perfectly drivable modern car is declared a total loss. Not because the engine exploded, not because the frame bent, not because the transmission failed, but because hidden behind a thin layer of painted plastic, modern cars are now packed with fragile electronic systems, so expensive and so precise that even the smallest impact can financially destroy the entire vehicle. And most drivers have absolutely no idea this is happening until it happens to them. Because modern cars are no longer designed like machines. They are designed like smartphones, disposable, locked down, software-dependent, and catastrophically expensive to repair. The terrifying part is that this transformation happened quietly, one sensor at a time, one camera at a time, one software update at a time. And now, a 5-mile-per-hour parking lot bump can cost more than rebuilding an entire engine from the 1990s. To understand how the automotive industry reached this point, you first have to understand what disappeared. For almost a century, cars were primarily mechanical. Steel, rubber, bolts, wires, physics. When older cars crashed at low speed, bumpers absorbed damage physically. A dent was usually just a dent. A mechanic could replace a panel, straighten a bracket, repaint the bumper, and send the vehicle back onto the road. The repair process was physical, visible, understandable. But modern vehicles operate completely differently. Today, the bumper is no longer just a bumper. It is secretly one of the most technologically dense parts of the entire vehicle. Hidden behind that painted plastic are radar modules, ultrasonic sensors, lane assistance cameras, adaptive cruise systems, pedestrian detection arrays, automatic emergency braking systems, parking guidance systems, and high-precision calibration targets. The modern bumper has effectively become an external computer, and computers do not tolerate impacts very well, especially precision-calibrated ones. The average driver never sees any of this technology because manufacturers intentionally hide it beneath clean aerodynamic surfaces. The car looks simple, but beneath that simplicity is a fragile electronic nervous system. One tiny shift in alignment can completely compromise how the vehicle interprets reality around it. And that creates a terrifying engineering problem, because many of these systems are directly tied to safety. Adaptive cruise control, automatic braking, blind spot monitoring, collision avoidance. If a radar module becomes even slightly misaligned after an impact, the system may begin making incorrect decisions at highway speeds. The car could brake too early, too late, or fail entirely. That is why repairs no longer end after replacing damaged parts. The real cost begins after the replacement. Calibration. Modern ADAS systems require extremely precise recalibration using specialized equipment. Some calibration rooms must maintain exact lighting conditions, precise floor angles, perfect wheel alignment, and manufacturer-approved target distances measured down to millimeters. In some dealerships, the calibration setup itself costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and every manufacturer uses different proprietary systems, meaning independent mechanics often cannot even access the software required to complete the repair. This is where the hidden business model begins to reveal itself, because modern automotive profitability is no longer centered only around selling cars. It increasingly revolves around controlling repairs. Manufacturers discovered something terrifyingly profitable. If they make repairs complex enough, drivers become permanently dependent on authorized service centers. A cracked plastic bumper no longer means bodywork. It now means software diagnostics, calibration fees, sensor replacement, dealer-only programming, subscription-connected systems, liability certifications. The repair ecosystem has become digital, and digital ecosystems are easy to monopolize. This is why repair bills have exploded globally. A modern LED matrix headlight alone can now cost more than entire used cars from previous decades. Some luxury headlights exceed $4,000 each before labor. Not because they simply produce light, but because they now contain processors, cooling systems, adaptive beam motors, cameras, communication modules, and internal electronics. Even modern side mirrors have become rolling computers. And when everything becomes electronic, everything becomes expensive. But the financial consequences become even worse once insurance companies enter the equation. Insurance companies operate purely on mathematics. They compare repair cost against vehicle value. The moment repair complexity pushes costs too high, the vehicle becomes economically disposable. This is why so many nearly perfect modern cars are now being totaled after minor accidents, not because they are destroyed mechanically, but because they are destroyed financially. And once insurance companies recognized how expensive modern repairs had become, premiums started rising everywhere. Drivers are now indirectly paying for the complexity hidden inside everyone else's bumpers, even people who never crash. The entire insurance system becomes more unstable when repair costs escalate faster than vehicle value itself. And this creates a disturbing contradiction. Modern cars are technically safer than ever before, but they are also becoming economically fragile. A car can survive a crash physically while dying financially. The irony becomes even more shocking when compared to older vehicles. A 1998 truck with a steel bumper could survive parking lot impacts for years with barely noticeable damage. But many modern luxury vehicles can suffer catastrophic financial consequences from impacts that barely leave visible marks. The industry calls this progress. Many drivers call it insanity. Especially independent mechanics, because they are increasingly being locked out of the repair process entirely. Manufacturers now protect software systems behind encrypted access gateways. Certain modules require factory authorization, specific diagnostic subscriptions, online verification, VIN-locked components. Some replacement parts literally refuse to function until approved digitally by manufacturer software. The mechanic may physically install the part perfectly, yet the car itself rejects the repair. This fundamentally changes the definition of ownership. You may physically possess the car, but software increasingly controls what you are allowed to repair. And this software dependency creates another invisible danger: long-term obsolescence. Mechanical systems can often be repaired decades later, but software ecosystems eventually die. Servers shut down, manufacturers discontinue support, modules stop receiving updates, and suddenly, perfectly functional vehicles become impossible to maintain simply because digital infrastructure disappears. The car industry is slowly drifting toward the same model used by smartphones and consumer electronics: shorter lifespans, locked ecosystems, mandatory upgrades, disposable ownership. And many drivers are only beginning to realize what this means, especially after experiencing their first modern repair estimate. There is a psychological shock that happens when someone receives a bill larger than expected. Because the human brain still thinks about car damage mechanically. People see a small scratch and expect a small repair. But modern repair economics no longer follow visible damage. The expensive parts are now hidden, invisible, buried beneath the surface. Which is why so many drivers walk into repair shops expecting hundreds and walk out facing thousands. Some people begin avoiding newer vehicles entirely after experiencing this once. Others intentionally search for lower trim levels without expensive sensor packages.
And some mechanics quietly continue driving older analog vehicles because they understand exactly where this industry is heading.
Because once every part becomes digitally connected, repair complexity never decreases, it only grows. And the future may become even more extreme. More cameras, more automation, more software dependency, more subscription systems, more manufacturer control. The car is evolving away from being a durable machine and toward becoming a permanently connected electronic platform. The question is no longer whether modern vehicles are technologically advanced. They clearly are. The real question is whether average drivers can survive the financial consequences of that complexity. Because for decades, people feared catastrophic engine failure. Today, the real nightmare might simply be a tiny bump in a parking lot.